Okay, so I am up and running today. Let's see if this works. All right, so I don't know why my other video earlier showed the wrong date on it, but I had it correct on here. So I'm not sure why the wrong date was showing up on that video. Anyways, I did a video earlier today and it says it's 10:18, but it's not. It was done today and it was done this morning and it was labeled this morning. Matter of fact, see, I forgot to change the notice on the top. So I got to change it to Monday night. All right. So Monday night Facebook Live. We are up and running. Let's see. So that's a link if you want to join me on Be Live. Also, I found there is a link I can give. You guys can click on it. It would share your profile information with Be Live. Then when you comment, I would be able to see your comments. Now, I don't know if this will work. But it would be nice if I could be able to make that happen. If I can't, I can't. It is what it is, right? But just realize sometimes it's hard for me to follow along because I can only see the last few comments on the Facebook Live session on Facebook itself. But Be Live lets me scroll back, which is nice. I can see the comments, but I don't know who's making the comments. And I don't know when you're replying to an earlier comment you had made. Like, I can't see those things. So I just thought I would have that available for you in case you would like to download that information. If not, that's perfectly fine. And I completely understand. Does not hurt my feelings in the least. However, as I pointed out, it may make it difficult for me to respond to your comments. So just realize that may happen. And have some patience with me. I will do the best that I can. Okay. So this evening, hi, Christina. Hi, welcome. Like I said, I can see the last few of you. I think it's like the last 3 or 4 comments. And then that's about it, unfortunately. So if you click on the link and share your information from your profile with Be Live, then it'll add your information in here and I can respond better to your comments. Otherwise, if you don't want to share or whatever, that's cool. I just see your comments as Facebook user. And it can be difficult, like I said, when I'm responding back to things. So just, like I said, be aware. Okay. So I am trying to set some windows up here. Try to figure out how I like to set things. I released my blog post. So those 2 books, those 2 ebooks I've been putting together, the with the educational eligibilities and the other book with the IEP process guides and procedural safeguards for all 50 states. I did all that just so I could write this post. And the post is pretty simple, but the information in the educational eligibility guide in particular was very important and instrumental in making this post. And it's really to explain, like I said, that difference between medical diagnoses, educational eligibilities, medical therapy, and educational therapy. Because again, they're different things, right? So very important you understand what these differences are, and I wrote this blog post to help enable you to understand those differences. So please take time to read the post. Very excited that I got it done. And this particular post only took me about 33 hours to finish. 30 hours for the guide, about 3 hours total with those interrupted time, right, to get this post written. Anyways, glad to have it finished. Hopefully that will, like I said, clear up some of those issues that you guys have. Okay, so unless you have questions, I'm going to start reading through some of these comments and some of these things that are in the group and answering questions out of the group. because we've had some really good questions posted recently. So one of them was from Jillian, and she said, I'm considering whether filing an IEE is prudent to obtain support from my son. The window closes in 4 days. Her son is 2E with medical diagnoses. Let's see, a PG, ADHD, SPD, provisional ASD, and suspected anxiety. So a nice little alphabet soup going on. The initial diagnosis was decent to my novice eyes. They recognized ADHD, but didn't see any indication of the sensory or autism behaviors. And so they wrote a very thin 504. And she said the 504 worked fine, but now he's in 2nd grade. He has a teacher who isn't really working with him. And so he's starting to struggle with behaviors. Hi, Jackie. Hi, how are you? Thanks for joining. So with him struggling for behaviors, including completing a class assignments, he received 5 write-ups last week. 5. That would be 1 every day, right? 5 write-ups and a referral. Putting him in detention and removing recess will not help. So she's like, I'm concerned we're heading down a bad path. Should I file for an IEE? So the simple answer to this is, unless you're under 1 year since the school last did their full psychoeducational assessment, that is the only time that you can ask for an IEE. So if you're at that point, and I believe she said she was, if I remember correctly, she was saying that it's 4 days until that time is up. So as long as she gets a letter in requesting more testing, then that would be fine. Or maybe this is somebody else, because she said a 504. We have a lot of overlapping of problems in the group, I've noticed just recently. Any case, if he only has a 504 and was never evaluated in the first place, that is a problem. So you wouldn't ask for an IEE at that point. Instead, what you would do is ask for your child to be assessed under IDEA. And you would need to do that because under 504, your child should have received an evaluation. They shouldn't have just taken a doctor's note, taken it there, and they're like, oh, okay, your child has ADHD, and then wrote out a 504. It's not how it works. They're still supposed to assess your child, even under Section 504. The problem with that assessment, though, is it's not well defined. It doesn't spell out under Section 504, like, what are we supposed to be assessing? Now, a lot of schools will use IDEA's standards for that, but not all do. So again, really important that you make sure to check these things out. So someone had asked, what's the difference between an IEE and an IEP? Great question. So make sure you read on our blog, okay? Make sure that you are reading our blog. And I have on there, so let me give you the address, actually, aesa.group. And make sure that you're reading our blog, because on the blog, I have a 3-part series called Special Education Terms to Know. And in that series, I define what an IEE is and an IEP. So the IEE is an independent educational evaluation, and an IEP is an individual education plan. So both things are listed under IDEA. All right, so we're both playing under the same law. So like for 504, those 504s are listed under the Rehabilitation Act. It's a different law, okay? But under IDEA, the IEE can be requested anytime after the school has done that initial testing for an IEP under IDEA, right? And then you have a disagreement with their assessments, whether that means you think they were poorly done, or because they didn't assess in areas that you think your child, the school should be suspecting your child of having a disability. So when that happens, then you ask for that IEE. All right. My mom, Kathy. Hi. Hi, Mom. Let's see. Mary, hi. Welcome. I'm glad you were able to make it this time. I know you were saying that you were all excited. So yay, I'm glad you were here. Like I said, please feel free to ask any questions as I work through things. But yes, be aware that even under Section 504, as I said, to have FAPE, to have your child have FAPE under Section 504, the school, must be assessing your child. So if that did not happen, that's already one denial of FAPE your child has experienced under Section 504. Even more reason then to ask your child to be assessed under IDEA and see if they really are needing an IEP, because from what you're saying with these issues, I would think they probably are going to need an IEP. All right. So, sorry, I had to wait for a window to open up. Now, I did answer this earlier. So there's a morning broadcast, but Brenda had a really interesting question to the group. So do take time to go read her post. She has quite the quandary, and I'm not even sure if I kind of fully went over everything. But I do want you guys to realize, again, so let me mention, like, there's these learning units that I have set up in the group. If you can find the learning units and access them, they're really helpful because they got a lot of really good information in the learning units. Let's see. All right. So Ivani, I just wanted to let you know, whoever you tagged, they can't see this right now, okay, in the group, because right now this is only showing in the group. The only way they could participate is to share the link I had up earlier. So right here, if you can share this link with them, they should be able to see. Otherwise, I will share a link later with you that you can then share with your friend. So Mary was just saying, just wondering what is involved in a state complaint. So for example, my kiddo with the 2 years behind in spelling and writing mechanics, can I file a state complaint for failure of child find? We are in Pennsylvania. Yes, you can. You can file a state complaint for a failure of child find. And that does seem like that's what happened. So Vonnie was saying she invited her to the group. So let me see if I can go and get her approved for you. But yes, I would look into filing a state complaint, or I would look into filing for due process. You will want to do one of those two things. Okay. And let's see. If you guys are experiencing any audio or video problems, please let me know. I seem to be having a little bit of lag, so I'm not entirely sure if you're kind of experiencing that on your end. All right. Let's see. Jillian. Hi, Jillian. Thank you for joining us. We're just starting to walk through here some of the comments that are in the group. So we were just, Jillian, talking about your post, and I was telling everyone they should check out your post. I did answer some of the information in your post earlier. Also found some resources for you for the state of Georgia. So Mary was just saying, thanks. Where do I go find info on filing a state complaint? So for filing a state complaint, there are a couple of good sites. So let me pull this up here. So the Center for Parent Information and Resources has something on here for filing a state complaint. And then Rights Law also has some information. So I will share that with you. And then let's see. I know that there is another resource out there that I really like to use and share, and I can't seem to find it right at this second. And I don't think it would take me long to find it, but it takes me longer than I'm kind of wanting to spin in the middle of this broadcast. So I will look for it. All you need to do is sort of poke me, and that'll remind me, and then I'll make sure that I do share it with you. So are IEPs good for mental health issues? That was brought up. Absolutely, they are good for mental health issues. So you can use a 504 for mental health issues, and that's done quite a bit. But if your child needs, I mean, kind of what's the difference is that if your child needs goals or your child needs modifications, then you need to get an IEP versus a 504. That's kind of the break between the two. So if your child has some kind of mental issue that they need, say, to work on self-esteem and social skills due to anxiety, then they need goals in order to help them get there. And if that's the case, then they should have an IEP. So remember that there are 3 things that are supposed to be examined when a school does an IEP, and that's academics, functional, and developmental. They need to be doing all of those. And so mental health issues definitely fall under that functional and developmental end of what the school is supposed to be assessing. So let's see here. We have, sorry, I'm kind of jogging a few windows around here. So Jillian was asking, what's the best way to reach me directly? That's a good question. I've had a lot going on, so I think I have finally kind of cleared off everything that I've been working on. So I'm ecstatic by that. Anyways, the best way to reach me is just to email me directly. And so that is Michelle, MICHELLE at AESA.group. And you can also find my email address in the group settings here in the group itself under the announcement post. So both my email address and Jackie's address are listed there. Let's see. Okay. I'm going to try to hopefully respond to some of these things as we go, right?
If you guys are experiencing any audio or video problems, please let me know. I seem to be having a little.
So Mary was just saying thanks, and then Chloe was saying so helpful, thank you. So you're quite welcome. And I do know, like I said, we are going to walk through some of these questions that have been posted in the group. It is very important, I think, to go through some of this stuff. Also know we do have our promotion that we have going on, right? It's also behind me. I always get that backwards. Anyways, it's going on to, I have it here behind me, which if you are not a paying member of AESA, I highly encourage you to go to get a membership. It's not required, but it is helpful because we have a lot of blog posts that answer a whole lot of questions. And those blog posts, we have our latest posts up for people to read for free, but the rest of our blog archives you can only access if you are a paying member. So please consider joining and getting a membership. I greatly appreciate it. It's my nonprofit that I run, AESA, and the memberships is my way of funding the nonprofit instead of doing fundraisers. So it helps provide money for us to empower the programs that I have. So one of the programs that we have is the Reed Scholarship. The Reed Scholarship is a grant to families of $3,000 to allow them to retain an attorney to pursue their case in due process. So it's modeled after a program that's only in Connecticut, and I'm really excited. So we're slowly building up our funds as we're gaining memberships. Also, if you're a member, it's really great because you are then allowed to access the park. The park is on our website, and it is our own online community on our website, and it looks and feels very similar to Facebook. So I like the fact that, you know, the interface to it feels similar to something, you know, we're used to. The promo code we have for this month, the Bronze 25, is 25% off our yearly Bronze memberships. Yearly memberships only cost $25. That's it. And then with the 25% off, it's $18.75. And I think that's pretty reasonable for a year's access onto a site. All right. So if you have questions, like I said, please ask your questions. I'm going to try to set things here so I can see when your questions come up. Okay. So I answered Julian's. So Chrissy is new to the group, and she was saying, what are the transportation laws in Maryland for IEPs? So I don't know if you guys are aware. Now, I did find the information for her and I'd shared it with her. Not sure she's been here to see it yet because there's no like thumbs up, right? So, but I already found it. It's already there. This is a common thing that I have to look up for people. Usually it's kind of one of two issues. One is children being left on the bus for an unreasonable amount of time, that they have, say, an hour's bus ride to school. Matter of fact, I think the longest I heard it was an hour and 45 minutes one way, which I think is absurd. But I have heard of transportation taking that long to get the child to the school. Also, or kind of the other half of that would be having transportation as a related service in your child's IEP, that the parent is fighting to get their child onto some kind of transportation to the school. In either case, it's a common topic. I have a lot of information on it. So if you guys ever need help on that end, please make sure to ask. So Lynn was saying, got my son's new IEP. They have not been supporting him for years. Now I'm just done. I do not agree with it. What is the next step in mediation or due process? So I wanted to let you know, Lynn, that it depends. So your very next step, if you do not agree with the IEP, did the school do a complete assessment? Did the school assess for all suspected disabilities as listed under CFR 300-304, right? And then it's part C. And then under that, it's like 4 that says, the child is assessed in all areas related to the suspected disability, including, if appropriate, health, vision, hearing, social and emotional status, general intelligence, academic performance, communicative status, and motor abilities. And like I said, that's just some of the things that they are supposed to be assessing. That's not even all of it. So did the school do that kind of assessment? Was it complete and comprehensive? If it wasn't complete and comprehensive, or there were irregularities in the administration of the testing that therefore would make the testing invalid, those are all significant and reasonable reasons to request an IEE. That's what we were talking about earlier, right? An independent educational evaluation. So in the IEE, that's when you ask for things that either weren't initially assessed, which you can do. Some schools will tell you you cannot, and they get to assess first. No, if they assessed and were supposed to do that comprehensive assessment, but failed to do so, and it's been less than a year since they completed that assessment, you are allowed to go and ask for that IEE and ask for these assessments in areas they did not initially assess. That is covered in the letter to Carol. I also discussed this in my blog post in the Special Education Terms to Know, the first blog post. Right towards the end, I talk about IEEs and that letter to Carol. Okay. So that might be your first step. If it wasn't a really good assessment, maybe we ask for an IEE first. Go there. If it was a really good and comprehensive assessment, then yes, at that point, you might need to file a state complaint. Some states, and I believe Pennsylvania is one of them, they have a facilitated or mediated IEP where a third party comes in and tries to work out the differences between the parent and the school district. Now, some of these some people kind of consider them to be kangaroo courts, like they're not set up equally. But do realize, you don't lose anything by participating. And it shows that you are trying to exhaust your procedural safeguards, the things that you can do to fight back under IDEA. So this way, if you do make it to due process, you're like, hey, I gave it my all. I tried my darndest to work stuff out with, the school district, but they just wouldn't deal with me. All right. So I will help you. Matter of fact, just to start off with, right? Got these new brochures, these new ebooks I have put together. So one of them, the IEP one that looks at the special education safeguards and procedural safeguards, that ebook is the one you want to look in, Lynn, because that you go right to Pennsylvania, just flip the pages until you get to P and find Pennsylvania. And there you can click on the procedural safeguards and it will take you right there. And then your procedural safeguards is really where it outlines all the things that you can do when you have a disagreement with the school district. So it's really important when you do have that disagreement with the school district, take time to go read your procedural safeguards. You're giving these, I think, pretty much at every IEP meeting. And pretty much nobody ever reads them. I know when I was initially given them, I didn't read them either. But that's because we don't understand or appreciate, and no one takes the time to explain to you the importance of those documents. So I'm trying to tell you now, they're very important. And where they come into play is when you are having issues with the school. Okay. So time to dig out those procedural safeguards. And then, of course, Lynn, if you have any more questions, please let me know. All right. And then I do want to share with you I do still have it open. So I do want to share with you, this is our bookcase with the information that we need. So that is where you can go and find the ebook that contains the procedural safeguards for all of the states. All right, so every state in the United States, I found their IEP process guide and procedural safeguards, and then threw in a few extra links if I thought they would be handy. Okay. Let's see. So let me continue on down the list here. So Christine brought up a really good question. A lot of people don't know and don't understand this question, which is, I was told today that you can't put a modification in a 504 only in IEP. Everything I'm reading online contradicts this. It states it's more unusual in an IEP, but not that it can be placed in a 504. Can anyone tell me which is correct? So I define these again in those special education terms to know blog posts. So if you haven't taken the time to go read these, right, take the time to go read those posts. Like, it took me a week to write each one of those because I tried to write it and then put in the best definition for whatever that jargon term is in special education. Really try to define it as best I possibly could, and then backloaded it with some really good and helpful information. Some of the information is very readable. It's simply written. And that's to help you understand. And then some of the information are those authoritative resources, those resources you want to be able to reference when you're at an IEP meeting, right? Because as I remind people, you never say, well, Michelle says, or you never say, well, my special education advocate says. You never go and say, well, Wright's law says. Don't ever do those things. They don't care. The school doesn't care. What the school cares, though, is when you go in and say, well, the law says, and be able to point to a specific law, or that the guidance from the U.S. Department of Education, it says, right? Those are things you want to reference and say. Never reference anything else. Make sure you're only referencing authoritative sources. Let's see. So the simple answer, I think, to give Christine when it comes to an IEP versus a 504. An IEP is needed when your child has academic, functional, or developmental issues that need to be addressed with goals, or you need modifications. You need a 504 if your child only needs accommodations and maybe related services. Related services can be incorporated to a 504. A lot of people don't realize that, but they can. And putting the services in there, that's fine. However, you will have no goals to go with those services, or you shouldn't. There shouldn't be any goals to go with that service, because there's nothing under Section 504 that requires the school to come back and revisit and reassess these goals. That's what IDEA is for and what an IEP is for. Also realize you don't need a 504 and an IEP. An IEP includes all of your 504 protections. All right. And this is stated very plainly in the guide on Section 504 that was written by the U.S. Department of Education, and it was written by the Office of Civil Rights itself. So I would consider that the most authoritative guide on Section 504. And again, it makes it very clear that a well-written IEP includes and encompasses 504 protections, which is why I also mentioned, right, if your child is starting to head and transition to high school, do not let the schools yank your child's IEP out from under them with this threat. Sometimes they tell you of, well, your child needs a 504 to go to college. No, they don't. Your 504 is in the IEP. Also, what they really need to go to college, you need to call the college's disability services and go talk to them and go find out. I've had some colleges tell me we don't even use 504s. What we want is a note from the doctor. So don't let the school use that as an excuse to scare you out of giving up your child's IEP. So just be aware. All right. I see a couple of comments here. So Brooke was saying, oh my God, amazing. Thank you. So you're quite welcome. I believe that's in relation to our guide. So I hope you do find those helpful, and you're welcome to share those. That's part of the reason I use the Flip HTML5 format, is because it's very readily shareable and it's very easily readable, no matter what kind of platform you're using, whether it's a tablet or a phone or on your computer. You can easily read this document and should be able to access it. So if you cannot, please let me know. So Lisa was saying, late night tutoring. I hope this is available for replay. Excellent information. Thank you. Well, you're quite welcome. And yes, so for you, it is late night. I will probably be on here about a total of an hour and a half. Usually I start at 6 p.m. That's West Coast time. That's where I'm at. I'm actually in Arizona, so Arizona is unique. We don't observe daylight savings time. So when everybody shifts here soon, Arizona does not. So currently we are in essence on Pacific time. And so when everybody shifts, we'll be kind of shifting our time to mountain time. So I just wanted you guys to be aware, though technically for us, we don't change at all because we are on Mountain Standard Time. How's that? It's a little crazy, right? So just be aware for these upcoming changes. If need be, I will try to correct this. But I'm on for an hour and a half, and that's just to allow those who are on the East Coast to be able to start participating. I know it might get late for you and you guys have to go to bed. That's understandable, but we continue on for those who are in the Midwest and in the West. It's kind of the fun of, right, we reach from coast to coast over here. So I'm glad you're enjoying this, Lisa. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. In the meantime, what I do is I go through questions that are in the group and answer those questions. Also, there will be a link posted in the group to this session. So you will be able to see it. We also have a YouTube channel. I need to get a little more consistent and uploading these to the YouTube channel. But again, that's another place where you can go and watch these. And also it makes it readily shareable, which is also why I try not to share too much information because this is information in the group and I don't want to share too much to those who are outside the group. So this is why I only bring up first names. Okay. Alrighty. Tara. So Tara had a fascinating thing that she posted. She said, when diagnosed with the following, the school states that she does not qualify for an IEP, only a 504. So the child has received medical diagnoses of ADHD, a specific learning disability in written expression, so dysgraphia, a specific learning disability in math, so dyscalculia. And also they have a, it says other specified neurodevelopmental disorder in the areas of visual processing and executive functioning. So the school is saying, right, doesn't qualify for an IEP, only a 504. To me, what this means is because they're saying that the school says, they said the school states an IEP is only for significant impact. All right, now that's kind of true in the fact that children need to be impaired enough. Usually it's a standard deviation and a half, sometimes 2 standard deviations. It depends on your state. Level of impairment before the school will step in, but normally that's academics. What they're not looking at, remember I told you, you're supposed to be assessing 3 things: the academics, the functional, and the developmental. So for attention deficit disorder and executive functioning, those in essence are the same thing. All right. So the hallmark of ADHD is executive functioning delay. So that impacts you sort of all over. All right. Everywhere, every facet of your life. Also, working memory and processing speed go into executive functioning. So typically there's delays in working memory and processing speed that the schools assess for that. It would be very important, and it's a very important question to ask. Did the school assess for executive functioning? Again, it's a very important question to ask. If they did not, these are all reasons why you would want to ask for an IEE. Did they assess for the dysgraphia? You know, does she have visual spatial dysgraphia, that she has a hard time writing, like the physical act of writing? Her handwriting looks like a mess. Usually that's what happens in children who have ADHD. And then the fact that she has a visual processing disorder on top of that even makes me assume even more, right, that it is a visual spatial dysgraphia. Now, she may also have the other side of dysgraphia, which is not being able to pull your thoughts together, okay, so that you can hold them long enough and form them into a well-ordered paragraph, be able to hold it here and then get it out and write it all down on paper. That also is dysgraphia, but it's kind of a different type of dysgraphia. But again, children who have executive functioning deficits or ADHD often have this as an issue. They have that attention problem. They usually have working memory problems. And those issues combined impair their ability to write well. So, did they assess any of that? When it comes to visual processing, what's the visual processing problem? Do you know? If not, that may be something you want to assess. If your child has a visual processing problem that impacts them in the learning environment with their ability to read, then potentially the child could qualify for visually impaired on an IEP, right? So these are all the things to kind of look at. Did the school assess all of this stuff? If they did not, this may be part of the reason why they don't see anything. But they should suspect that your child has these disabilities just based on these medical diagnoses. I have tons of peer-reviewed journal articles, both medical and educational, that tie all of this together. So if you need that information, contact me. I do have it. And that would help kind of bring this together. But really what you need to do, I think, is probably to ask for an IEE since the school isn't seeing this stuff. Also, again, under Section 504, right? Did the school offer to evaluate, or did they just go, oh, you got the doctor's note with ADHD. Thank you. When we're all done, here's your little pathetic 504. Did they do that? If so, it's a denial of FAPE under Section 504. The problem is with Section 504, in my opinion, your only usually procedural safeguard is to go to due process. A lot of people are very intimidated by that. So I don't know what happened here. I don't know, because she didn't mention, if the school has fully assessed. I believe, though, they were saying we had gotten to the stage of this was from an IEE. So if this information is from an IEE, then we're at the end stage of that, right? And if the school is still saying, hey, we don't see stuff, I would give it one more shot by working with me, essentially, and I can help pull for you information in these peer-reviewed journal articles to give to the school to say, no, you should be suspecting my child has a disability, and maybe even giving them, trying to say that you want to exercise your rights under IDEA, because if you've done an IEE, then they're letting you kind of play under the rules of IDEA. So that next thing is you tell them, I want to know what are my procedural safeguard options to have a dispute with the school. And again, that comes down to what is your procedural safeguard say for your state? What kind of options does your state offer? Often, like I said, there's a mediated IEP or some kind of mediation. There's the state complaint mechanism. There's definitely due process for certain that you can exercise in order to have this fight with the school. But it looks like you may have to do that if that is the case. Okay. So Mary was asking earlier, what time am I on? So look for me, just so you guys know, I am always on Monday evenings. Okay, so Candace has a question. She said she'd asked earlier in the group, and then hopefully that's okay to ask here. So absolutely, if you asked early in the group, you can just copy and paste your question, and that's fine. She said, I've been wanting to proceed with the IEP/504 evaluation request. It got put on pause at our first meeting, and I agreed to that because I'm overwhelmed. But in the meantime, I'm realizing it probably would have been better to move my son to mornings only via dual enrollment. This will make him a homeschooler technically. Will this affect what I can do from the school for IEP evaluations, are dual enrolled kids afforded the same rights as regularly enrolled kids? And this is in Iowa. Great question. It's a really good question. So there's a little bit of ins and outs, and part of this is with your state law. All right. So part of it depends on your state law and then how they view the children. So in some states, if you homeschool your child is still eligible for services from the school. The school must supply related services. So, therapy, OT, PT, speech, and that kind of stuff. Other states, like where I live in Arizona, they don't have to do that. They give some services in my state, and it's based by school district, and then what the school district opts to supply to private school students. So they treat homeschoolers like private school students. And then it's up to each school district to decide, what are they going to do? Are they going to provide the same services as public school students? Are they going to provide services but at a lower amount? Or are they not providing anything at all? Each school district in my state gets to make that decision. Other states, it's just flat out, they're like private school students, and many of them, you don't get any help at all. So you would have to look and see for Iowa specifically, what does it say about homeschoolers? Now, as it turns out, I'm a really odd educational advocate. And so what I mean by that is that I practice special education advocacy, but I homeschool my children. My husband is a public school teacher, and we enjoy homeschooling our children. I'm also just as quick to advise you to homeschool as I am to tell you to put your child into public school. So I'm a little odd as an advocate like that. So I will tell you, in Iowa, it says a parent, a guardian, or legal or actual custodian of a child with a disability is not required to seek approval from an area agency to provide private instruction. Otherwise, the parent may homeschool a child who has been identified as having special needs only if they have approval from the special education director. So I'm thinking that's probably how yours would work, because you would be doing this kind of dual enrollment. And it says that children may dual enroll in public school and receive special education services. So there we go. That would be the answer to your question. So now, and I do want to back up here because I wasn't very clear. So I do want to make this very clear. When you were asking, what is the school's responsibility? The school still has a child fine obligation. All right. So no matter what, whether your child is homeschooled in private school or in public school, the school still has a child fine obligation. That means that they are to screen children, and when they screen a child, if there's concerns, they're supposed to start them and kind of into the special education process. All right. So, anyways, they're supposed to kind of get going in that process, but often the school fails to do that. You have to get the parent and have the parent send in that letter to ask for testing. I did want to get to, because we were talking about modifications in the 504. So I did want to let you know, yes, I did answer that question, Christine, about modifications in the 504. But the short answer is no, modifications may not go into a 504. Only an IEP can contain modifications. Also, it can contain goals. If your child needs goals for something, if your child needs goals for to work on anxiety, if your child needs goals for working on social skills, if your child needs any kind of goals whatsoever, academic goals are the most common, but there are these social emotional kind of goals that are related to those developmental and functional aspects that a child is supposed to be assessed for an IEP. Okay. If your child needs those things, then they have to have an IEP versus a 504. All right. And all this is very clear. And I don't think I remember to give you that, but let me give you this link. All right. So the link that I just shared is the Parent and Educator Resource Guide to Section 504 in Public Elementary and Secondary Schools. It is written by the Office of Civil Rights under the U.S. Department of Education. So I was mentioning earlier, I don't think there's a more authoritative guide out there. I really like this guide. Let's see here. So it does talk about modifications. Maybe this is part of the reason you were confused. Okay, so it talks about modifications in this guide, and you can make some modifications, but I think where they're really kind of looking at what's the break in modifications between Section 504 and an IEP is going to be those academic modifications in particular. If you're looking at modifications and say you need a computer modification, all right, so we're not changing the level of the material your child is trying to access. Does that make sense? We're not changing how hard it is. We're not changing and trying to make it simpler so that the child can understand the concepts. That would be considered a modification. Now, here in the guide, the Section 504 guide, it's talking about modifications. It's talking about like computer modifications. Well, a computer modification isn't going to change your child's level of difficulty of their schoolwork, what they're learning, right? So technically, most people would still consider that an accommodation, not a true modification. So I hope that makes sense. And that may be part of the reason you're getting confused about what you're seeing, but that would be the difference. The difference would be the modifications that you would have in an IEP is looking to modify the level of work your child is having to do. Okay, let's see. Let me go back here to look for questions. Would only grading a child on what they're in attendance for be considered a modification? Yes, because your child would then be potentially missing large chunks of their education. And they can't do that for very long before they start missing some really important stuff. And they'll be behind academically from their peers. So I would think it probably would be. That's a good question. All right. And potentially, if need be, we can discuss this more in the group. All right. If no one else has any other questions for the moment, I'm going to go back here to reading some of these other things out of the group. Oh, wait a minute. Anne has a question here. She said, our child is enrolled in a public charter school. He has a 504 plan, but we're in the middle of getting him assessed for an IEP. It's very common, actually. He had to unexpectedly go into an out-of-district medical facility. The school wants to drop him as he hasn't been able to attend. Can they? So no, they should not be dropping him. What they should be doing is looking to have an emergency meeting and then deciding if he needs to be on homebound and supplying services to him in the facility. So, and it also says, would the school still be responsible to follow through with IEP testing? Yes, the school is still responsible. That goes back to what I was saying earlier about their child find obligations, right? The school must follow through on child find obligations. They have to. So that would be part of their child find obligation, is to finish following through with the IEP testing process. Okay. Let's see here. I keep opening windows and lose where I'm at. All right. So Dale is a new member and was saying, I have a 504 meeting this Friday for my son. I've already been warned by the school psychologist. They've gotten stricter with giving 504s. And because my son's grades are so good, he may not get it. So let me explain. You cannot. You cannot deny a child a 504 or an IEP just due to grades. You just can't. So this is sort of answered all over the place. It depends on which part we're looking at. I really need to write a blog post on this to kind of pull all of this together. It comes up quite often. So under section 504, okay, it says very clearly in the manual. Matter of fact, I'll just look it up here because I know it says it in several places. First place I've come across right here, page 5 in the guide. All right. You can see school staff should note that a student may have a disability and be eligible for Section 504 services, including modifications. Remember, we were talking about that earlier. But it doesn't necessarily mean modifications to the curriculum, the modifications to what they're learning. It means other modifications, like a computer modification, modification to how they access the building, other modifications that don't require a change in the level of what they're learning. All right. And it says, though, it goes on to say, even if the student earns good grades. So it makes it very clear. Staff should note that a student may have a disability and be eligible for Section 504 services, even if the student makes good grades. So it says, and it goes on to say in this little saying, it's a little box, the second box on page 5. So you guys can click the link and follow me right there and go read. Matter of fact, you know what? I think, let me see if I can do this earlier. I did this earlier and it was kind of cool. So let's see if I can share my screen. That's text to screen. How did I do that earlier? That was kind of fun to be able to share my screen. Screen share. There we go. This way, you guys can just follow right along with me. Okay, so now you can see what I'm saying. So what it says right here, notice I have it highlighted. By the way, I'm going to show you one of my favorite tricks. So what you can do when you have a large document is you hit Control F if you have a Mac and it opens up a window. And I think if you have an Apple, it's the Mac key and F. But you can put in any kind of search terms. So in this case, we're looking for good grades. And like I said, this brought me initially to page 5 in this bar, and you can kind of see it there. It's highlighted, making it easy for you to find. And then it goes on to discuss a little more of an example talking about the student and their disabilities. And then there's a whole nother, as you can see on a different page, page 21, it discusses a child having good grades, yet still qualifying for a 504, right? And then this, nope, that was it. So page 5 and page 21 discussed instances where a child can have Section 504 and still have good grades. Now, so this is all concerning Section 504. So what does IDEA say? So let's go look. So under IDEA, let's see. Let's go here. So this is FAPE. This is under state's obligation for FAPE. So I think you guys can see this okay on here. And it says here in this section, unfortunately, I don't have like a really good way to highlight it. Maybe I can do that there. So in this section here, all right, so this is 300.101C. It says children advancing from grade to grade. Each state must ensure FAPE is available to any individual child with a disability who needs special education and related services, even though the child has not failed or been retained in a course or grade and is advancing from grade to grade. So that right there shows you, right? Your child is still entitled to FAPE. Your child could still be entitled to needing, okay, sorry. I was distracted there. Somebody was like, I could hear 2 audio tracks. All right, I think they resolved it. So their child is needing, like I said, an IEP or a 504, even though they have good grades, it can be done. It should be done. If your child has, remember, I told you that 3-prong effect, right? Academics, functional, developmental. Your child is having functional and developmental issues. So the fact that they have good grades, who cares? They're talking about, let's see. I'm trying to go back here and see where I was so you guys can see where so this is Dale's post, and he was talking about how his child has OCD and there are some other issues, and sort of with that OCD and these other issues, he might be making good grades, but functionally and developmentally, he's having issues. And so with that, he should be given an IEP if it's determined his needs need to be addressed with goals. Okay. Alrighty. So Anne posted earlier, and so she had a question. And again, like I said, guys, for those of you who are tuning in, if you have any questions, please ask. Child cyber school. All right, hold on. Somebody did ask a question. I missed that earlier. So Joan asked, she said, I have a question. Could my child cyber school with special education with appointments? So if you're meaning, can your child be in online public school? Okay. Yes, they can be in online public school and still have appointments, not only with the school and to do services. All right. So the school will provide therapy services if it's deemed they're needed. But you can also do private medical appointments, because when you do online public school, you're in charge of the schedule. So you get to work things around your child's medical appointments. I know we did K through 12 for a school year to try it out, and also to qualify my children for a school choice program that's available in my state of Arizona. So we did K through 12. I will tell you, it is very rigorous, K through 12. There's a lot of work to do, unless your child does get moved to one of their special education tracks. And then the workload lightens up some, makes it a lot more manageable, especially if you are going to therapy appointments too, because I know we were doing that also. But I will say it is nice because it's kind of this pre-packaged thing. And if you're going to educate your child at home and you feel like you're not sure if you're capable to educate your child at home, then this potentially could be a good option for you. But I will say most everybody has the ability to educate your child at home. So don't be afraid of that. I know a lot of people are like, I can't do it. Yeah, you probably can. There's a difference between whether you can or do you want to. That's a whole nother topic. But you, I believe, have the capability. I mean, if you yourself graduated from high school, I firmly believe that you have the capability to educate your child at home. So, and I also run a homeschool group for children who are homeschooled. So if you guys are ever interested in that information, I will be happy to share that with you. Let's see. So Christy was writing, I have a 13-year-old 7th grader with dyslexia, dyspraxia, and a written expression goal and severe anxiety. So dyslexia, dyspraxia, and then I would say dysgraphia, along with the severe anxiety. And so let's see. All right. I would make sure that they don't have any issues in math, because if they have dyslexia and dysgraphia, often you'll see that third prong of dyslexia. You'll see the math issue, the dyscalculia. And then you have, like I said, the severe anxiety, the dyspraxia. Dyspraxia is motor movement issues. And then this person is reading at a 3rd grade level. And they said the IEP last year stated under testing accommodations, read or clarify directions. And last year, every test was read to him. How would you interpret the read or clarify directions under testing accommodations for this year? So I would say it would probably stay the same, right? If it was interpreted this way in 2nd grade, why would it really necessarily change in 3rd grade unless it has to do with state testing? So they may say, because your child's now in 3rd grade, they have state testing that they have to do for the 3rd grade year. So whether it's end of grade testing or some other name they use for their state testing, pretty much every state has some kind of 3rd grade bar a child must pass through testing. There are accommodations for state testing, and you want to make sure those get put into place. It's really easy to do because pretty much every state, due to the efforts of the state to try to standardize state testing in every state, pretty much everyone has a guide out there for your state's state testing that defines what accommodations may be given to a child for state testing purposes. So you just want to find that information. Now, if you are trying to get the state to waive state testing, usually there's a lot that goes into that. Some of you have just withdrawn your children altogether from school for those days state testing is administered, so they miss state testing. That might be fine. It could be a problem. Depends on your state's laws. So do be aware of that and just watch it, okay? Like, be careful if you do something like that. Let's see. So we answered that one. Okay, so Christina asked a question earlier, and I'm not sure that I had gotten around to answering it. So let's see if we can get an answer here to your question, Christina, if you're still watching. She said, hello, could someone please help me with understanding my daughter's articulation data and goals? I do not understand the SLP wording whatsoever, the language they use. It looks like to me the SLP is trying to change when my daughter meets 2 goals and also what she's working on. I've also noticed some changes in her communication log, and the SLP sent home a sticky note with her progress report home. Her baseline was 10% in May, and in these 2 areas. So Also, okay. So she's saying that she's not seeing the data that she would think that she would see. So I do want you to know, because a lot of people don't realize this. Matter of fact, let me see if I can switch screens here. All right. So I'm going to look this up so you guys can see. So a lot of people don't realize that when you are in an IEP meeting and you're being presented data, you are supposed to be able to understand the information being presented to you. So one of the parts of the law, so I wanted you to be able to see. So it's 34 CFR 300-322. It's called parent participation. Now, if you scroll down here and you look at this, so this is E out of this law, and it says the use of interpreters or other actions as appropriate. And it states the public agency, so that's the school, must take whatever action is necessary to ensure the parent understands the proceedings of the IEP team meeting, including arranging for an interpreter for those who are deaf or their native language is in English. All right. So most of it look and they're like interpreters and then just sort of stop there. But no, what it says is the school must take whatever action is necessary to ensure that the parent understands the proceedings of the IEP team meeting. So feel free to call an IEP team meeting and then ask the speech pathologist, what is with the data? I don't understand. I need you to interpret the data to the point I can understand. If you don't understand goals and how the goals are written or how the goals make sense, you know, if just reading the goal confuses you, that's a problem that should never happen. Your goals and everything should be written in plain and simple language that is easy for anyone to understand. So at any point during an IEP meeting, when you are discussing these goals and what data will be collected and how it will be collected, make sure that you're understanding what happens. You are entitled to that by law. All right. And then this is the section of law that you point to make that point. All right. Let's see. Now, as far as the interpretation of data, I will tell you it's a hot mess. So this isn't really data, by the way, Christina, that you were given. What it is, it looks like notes. So I would ask for a professional write-up of what has been accomplished and worked on and where her progress is. And I would send an email. I would send an email to the IEP team telling them you need help in understanding this data and this information because what was sent home is not suitable. It seriously is really, this is what notes, because I've seen SLPs and the data that they produce. And this is notes that the SLP took. This is not a report. This is not data. These are just notes. So I would go back and make sure, write that email, right? Or put together a letter and send it in with an additional copy. Like you have to take it in and, like I said, have that school secretary stamp it as received, which is why I like email better. But to email not only the SLP, but also the head of the IEP team and your child's teacher, and then just say, I don't understand this data. I need you to write me a report as the speech therapist where this data makes sense to someone who is not a speech language pathologist. They should have that capability. All right. So next question. And like I said, you guys feel free, if you have any questions, just feel free to ask whatever questions that you would like. In the meantime, as I said, I'm just sort of going through and, okay, good. I'm just going through and answering questions in the group. Matter of fact, oh, there we are. Alrighty. Making sure I find all my windows here. Okay. So Amy asked a question and she said, we have an IEP meeting this Wednesday. Our private speech therapist did a comprehensive test of phonological processing. It's the CTOP 2. And anyone have ideas on what supports that we can ask for from the school? Last year, they did a different evaluation to say she no longer needs speech, but she has been identified by the teacher for an extra program with others in the class who were struggling with pre-reading skills. I don't even know what could be offered, and looking to see if others had their child struggle in the same areas. So where she is having weakness is in phonological awareness, early literacy, there we go, early literacy, in addition to semantics and pragmatics and problem-solving skills. So all of these things together as a whole would make me concerned that she may have issues with dyslexia. The issues with semantics and pragmatic skills makes me wonder potentially about autism, because that is an area of weakness in children who have autism, is that semantic and pragmatic skills. So something to consider, and I do have in the group, again, in those learning units, right? I have a under the autism unit, there's a little subsection about girls and autism and how autism presents differently in girls than it does boys. So it might be interesting just to read through and look at it and then think, does this represent your child? If it doesn't, then maybe her only issues truly are dyslexia. If it does, then potentially maybe there are issues with autism. And if that's the case, there are likely other underlying learning disabilities that have yet to be discovered. Let me see if I can pull that up. So I'm going to screen share with you guys again. I'm going to show you where I go and pull that information, because I know this comes up a lot and people are always wondering. So let's go here. So this is in the group. And again, now I'm on a desktop so you guys can see, but it's over on this side that I highlighted, right? The left-hand side. You'll see that it talks about IEP, but then there's about, discussion, and then units. So it's clicking on units, and this is what units look like. So units here, the first full unit here is this one, important information. This is the information in the announcement post, just so you guys know. Then I have transitional and vocational services, anxiety, self-advocacy, and self-esteem goals. I have this learning unit, as I mentioned earlier, on ADHD and executive functioning, sensory, autism, specific learning disabilities, FERPA, and privacy. Another post on important group information, but actually I think I had tried to delete that one before and it would never let me delete it. And I have one here at the very end on 2E and twice exceptional. Okay, so there's quite a few topics that I cover in the learning units in the group. So what's kind of tricky about them is you see here, like in the autism one, you don't click autism. What you do is you click one of these little folders. So I have girls and autism. That's the last one there. And then it opens up this page. So here's the girls and autism unit. I'm going to open this up so I can access this history here, just so I can copy and paste and share it. But I wanted to show you, though, this is where the units reside. And there's some great information. So I have the subunit here on girls with autism. This is a bunch of links. I have written a blog post on the topic. So feel free to go check that out. I also have this unit on diagnoses a child can receive before getting their autism diagnosis. This is a paper from Spectrum News where they kind of summed up the journal article that was done. And then I also have a link to the journal article itself so you can read it. Because that's one of the things, like I said, with my background as a scientist, I don't want people to tell me, I don't want people to interpret things for me. I want to see it myself, read it myself, and be able to come up with my own interpretation of events. I also have in here resources for those who have a child medically diagnosed with autism. So in this post, I have not only kind of a blurb about what it is that you can request for testing if you're wanting to get your child educationally assessed for autism, but then also a lot of blog posts that I have written concerning this topic. So they've got a lot of information in there. All right. Let's see. Entered that one earlier. Let's see. Entered that one. Got that one. All right. You know what? I think I'm actually caught up for tonight. That was good timing. So, because I'm at 80 minutes for tonight's broadcast. I'm usually on about 90 total, about an hour and a half. And that allows me to not only answer all the questions that you guys might have, but usually to go through and at least get relatively caught up with all the information that are in the group. Okay. So, let me see here. Oh, there we go. You guys can see me again a little bit better. So please let me know if you have any other questions. Otherwise, we're going to work on wrapping this up this evening. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's been fun. I will, and as I state pretty much every time, I will continue to do these as long as you guys are attending and as long as it is worthwhile, right? Oh, somebody said, I love your little helper in the background. Yeah, that would be one of my like 18,000 cats in my house. No, I'm just kidding. No, that is Ash though. And she's funny and she'll jump right up here on my shoulder. So you may see her pop into the screen every now and again, just out of nowhere. Anyways, though, as I state every week, I do these, and as long as you guys are coming and it makes sense, and then it helps me with answering your questions in the group, I'll continue to do these. And matter of fact, I'll do them even more frequently if that's something that is needed or something you guys want. So just let me know. I enjoy interacting with you guys and being able to take the time to answer whatever questions you have to the best of my ability. What I don't know, I try to research and find information for you. So if for some reason I didn't get around to answering your question or answering it completely, please post in the group and I will try to get around to answering it this evening. If not, probably by tomorrow. Like I said, I try to work really hard to make sure everything gets covered. And that I have gone through and I've read pretty much every post in the group. Even if I don't answer, sometimes I don't answer because I don't need to. You were already given good advice by someone else. And I may not directly answer. So I just wanted to let you know. So Ashley was just saying that I hate that I missed this. So realize, Ashley, that I do this every Monday. I mean, like, that's my goal, is to do it every Monday and to answer questions live. But this is, like a recorded broadcast. So I will be providing a link, and that way you can watch it later. With the link, you can also share it. So, this allows you to kind of utilize this broadcast to look into things. All right. Well, thank you guys for hanging out with me this evening. I appreciate it. And as I said, look for me next week. Set a timer. Right? That's what I have my Amazon Echo, and you'll hear it go off in the background some nights. And that's because I have reminders that go off to prompt my children to do things that they need to be doing. I have a reminder that actually goes off on here to prompt me to remind me I have this going on every Monday night. Right? So you may want to do the same. Set a reminder to help remind you to catch me next Monday. So Ashley was just saying, yep, she'll try to catch me next Monday. Set that reminder. I'm on here at 6 p.m. Pacific time. If you look for the post, and I'll post the link to tonight's broadcast to that post. But in that post, I break down everybody's time and where I will be online. So yeah, I try to put that on there for you guys to help you out. All right. Well, see you next Monday. And again, write questions in the group. I will try to get around to answering them as soon as possible. And for those of you who are paid members of AESA, go visit the park. The park is our online community on our website. And you can catch me there too, because often I post information there that I don't post elsewhere. And it's a great place to ask me questions there. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Have a good night.